So I'm here today with Robbie Goddard. Hi, Robbie. How you doing?
Hi, David. Yeah, very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. I'm very good, thank you. And really excited to have a chat with Robbie today about his development and his future-proofing himself in his career and the transition from education into the working environment and the changes and what he's learnt from that. And what he's doing currently, he's going to give us an overview of his current profession. And then obviously to finish off with, it'd be great to find out a little bit about how you see the future in terms of development. And yeah, also the industry that you're in, that you can tell us about how you feel that that may be changing. I was going to say over the next few years, but it may be over the next few weeks and months, and who knows? I think
Yeah.
the whole time scale is just squashed. So to start off with then, could you give us sort of a brief overview of your story so far?
Yeah, so I've grown up in St Albans, so just north of London. Then I went down to university down in Exeter, where I studied for an economics degree. I stayed on down there for a fourth year, so I studied for a master's degree in international management. Then moved straight into a job into London at PwC. So I work in the audit division at the moment. This is sort of where you study to become a chartered accountant, as well as sort of working alongside it. So in terms of that, it's pretty tricky having both sets of sort of exams whilst working at the same time.
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate to pass my finals in November time.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, so in the next couple of months I should be sort of chartered status, which is very nice. And yeah, so now I'm full-time working, so studying's done. So I guess in terms of my role, I kind of work in two different areas. So the audit division splits into a number of different areas. And the first one I work in is the corporate audit division. So this is where we audit large corporate company financial statements. So
that's quite interesting that you see other companies and how they work.
Exactly. Yeah. So we go into new companies every sort of 2 or 3 weeks almost. So you're sort of picking apart all their different strategies and making sure that it's providing, you know, their stakeholders the value and the fairness that they're desiring.
Yeah.
And I guess the second sort of part of my work is with the pension fund division. So I audit a number of these companies' pension funds. So my job is to kind of ensure that, you know, an individual's contributions are being invested correctly and in line with what they're meant to be, and that essentially retirees are getting the pension that they sort of deserve and have put in all those years.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that's wonderful. So that's a good overview of what you're doing. So over the sort of last 4 or 5 years, obviously through your studying into the working environment, how has life changed in terms of your expectations of what the working world was going to be like to the reality?
It's a tricky one with the studying side, because I guess with the way that we've done it at PwC is that by working and studying at the same time, you're kind of extending your university career. You know, your studying wasn't done when you got your degree, and it's been a lovely transition between you know, studying at university and the experience we gained there, to then having that sort of middle period at work where half our time is dedicated to study, half our time is dedicated to work. And now I've kind of transitioned into the full-time work where, you know, whether my expectations of a few years ago are the same as what's happening now, I'm not sure. You know, I didn't really expect to be in an office environment. I didn't expect to be an accountant, certainly. Yeah. My father was an accountant, and I always said for years, never following in your footsteps. But look at me now, you know, I have indeed. So
always play to your strengths.
Exactly. Yeah, he must have seen something in me that I've sort of followed in that. But
good stuff. Well, what my view is with accountants is that if you study to be an accountant, you can then go off and do anything you really want. But you can't, if you do something else, you can't then get into accountancy.
Exactly.
And I think it opens up so many opportunities. And plus also what I'm absolutely flabbergasted by, that in a lot of businesses, how people don't understand the finances and how it all works. And I just, well, how do you make money? Just simple concepts. Oh, don't know, I just do this job. And Yeah, so I think it's always a great choice. So
Yeah.
from your university and your working time, anything you've really learned about yourself that you're applying in your everyday work and
Um,
everyday life?
yeah, I think sort of from university, and you're taking in all these experiences at the same time, and that certainly doesn't stop when you enter the working world. So I think something that I always try and do is always just listen to people below me and above me. So we come into contact with all sorts of teams because we're working on individual clients. One client will be managed by one manager, then you'll have a different manager, and any one time you've got 4 or 5 different people that you're working for, and that also means that you've got juniors below you who are working for you on different clients as well.
Yeah.
So the key, I think, that I try and use is just to listen to each individual there and sort of know what they're after, and in that way you can prioritize your own work.
Yes.
And that allows you to have the most efficient and sort of enjoyable working day.
So you're always seeking to understand others and what they're looking for and what they're wanting.
Yeah, that's the main thing that I'm trying to get
Yeah.
sort of into my working life.
Yeah, brilliant. And what's the best piece of advice you've been given along the way?
Oh, lots. I think firstly, probably to carry a notebook. I had quite an awkward exchange with a manager a long time ago. So it was probably in the first week. And I think she'd noticed I wasn't carrying a notebook at all. And she used this to her advantage to kind of sit me down and ask me sort of pressurized questions that I should have known or should have written down in a meeting. And that was kind of a big opportunity for me to kind of realize, carry a notebook, write as many experiences as possible. How many ideas you've got, what ideas other people have.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's fascinating, despite the world of technology, that we still use our notebooks.
Precisely.
And I use my notebooks from the front for my to-do lists, but at the back of my notebook is where I have all my reflection pages
Yeah,
and all the things that
absolutely.
are ongoing and think about. So I use the front for every day, and the back of it sort of for slightly long-term
Yeah,
planning. And I love a cup of tea in my notebook. Turn the
yeah,
phone off and just
absolutely.
don't forget your notebook.
Yeah,
Valorise words.
indeed. That's something you mentioned a lot in your book, David. That at all times, if you can have your notebook on you, whether you're on the train, whether you're in a meeting, maybe the
Yeah,
5 minutes before you go into a meeting,
yeah.
you can take your ideas and your experiences and note it down.
And create that little bit of reflection and thinking time, which is also very important. So that's sort of perhaps the best advice. So what have you enjoyed most about your career so far?
Certainly finishing my exams. That was
Oh, that must have been great relief.
a big milestone. Yeah. So essentially the exams are two years worth of studying. You have 15 professional exams. The last 3 are all nearly 4 hours long. So it's a pretty intense time. So that was a hugely rewarding and sort of enjoyable time.
So when you finished, did you suddenly think, what am I going to do with all this time?
Definitely. I can see my friends again, which was the main thing.
Yeah.
Because they struggle through it with you, I think. But I guess other aside from exams, it's that we work in a real team environment, and the most enjoyable thing is finishing an audit through all those long hours. It's the collaboration of ideas, the technical skills we use and chat to each other about, the communication, the problem solving. It's those things that at the end of an audit where we've signed it off and we've had we've worked very hard on it, but at the end of the day, it's those team experiences and finishing things that I enjoy the most.
And are you quite good as a team in looking at what you're good at and what went well as what perhaps could have done better?
It's interesting you say that, because it's something you'd think would happen on every engagement that you're on, as you sit down and you review. And I think that's something we need to do more almost. We do it a lot anyway, but I think there's certainly space to really get into a granular level on what went well, what didn't go so well, and push it through to the next year.
Yeah, and it's sort of perhaps taking some of the concepts from the great sporting teams of the world, that they're constantly reviewing of what they're good at and how they can continue to be good. And I perhaps it's just a British thing that we're just perhaps not so good at that, and sort of sitting down. So what are we good at? Because I think that makes you more effective in the future.
Yeah,
Ups the confidence and the self-esteem, and can have real positive impact. Okay,
yeah.
so that's what you've enjoyed the most there, then, working in the team and sort of finishing off and feeling that you've accomplished, which is great. So what's been the most challenging? Obviously, I dare say, juggling the exams and work.
Of
Anything
course.
else that you found particularly challenging?
Um, I think just in our daily motto, I think we kind of go with the idea of challenge and be challenged. So that's something we really bring into our work at PwC. So I guess the first one on sort of to challenge, in audit, it's all about challenging and being skeptical, never taking the first answer to be the right answer. And we're being pushed into these meetings with very high up people, who I've only worked for 1 or 2 years, but within a couple of weeks, I was in meetings with finance directors, financial controllers, and they ask you a question, and God knows. So I guess that's that sort of to challenge them, but also being challenged back from them. And the more experiences I've put myself in on doing that, then the more you're in good stead for the future.
Yeah, and it's learning from those experiences and learning from if you can, learning from those people. It's what I call free learning.
Yeah,
Because you are, as you say, dealing with some, pretty influential people, and there again, they've got their own stories and how they've got to where they've got, and I think all that learning from them. But that sort of tests you, and you've got to perform to the best of your abilities.
indeed. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's tough to start with, but you get used to it. You start understanding how people approach you, and sometimes it's not the worst thing to say, actually, I don't understand this. Can you please talk to me about that again?
Yeah, and once you can start to embrace that challenge, and I love to challenge and be challenged, and once you can embrace that challenge, you think, bring it on, I'm going to learn. As long as you're then able to reflect after each of those meetings and think, there again, what did I do well? Because that boosts your confidence and your self-esteem for the next one. And
Exactly.
what do I need to tweak? We've all said the wrong thing at the wrong time in the wrong way at certain stages, and you think, why did I say that?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things I've learned a lot more over time, is that I think at the start I probably took everything on face value. So if you're getting given a piece of information from someone that's worked for 20 years and they've done this job for a long time, but I'm a first year auditor, I'd be like, yeah, probably true. But actually, over those times, as you learn to develop your sort of challenging skills, and as your technical knowledge goes up, you can push them back and start easing sort of a few questions on them and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. And it's, obviously this is in a series of other podcasts and videos that we're doing with some other people of the young generation of starting out on their working career. And a lot of them have said, about being inquisitive and asking the right questions makes such a difference, and having the confidence to do so.
Absolutely, yeah, completely agree with that.
Yeah, good stuff. So if you could turn the clock back, or perhaps give advice to someone else who's starting out in their sort of, going into accountancy and doing all the studying, what advice would you have given yourself if you could turn the clock back? And what advice would you give people setting out now?
I think with just on the theme of accountancy, I've absolutely loved doing it, and it's immensely rewarding once you've completed it. And as you say, it stands you in great stead for almost your whole career, even if you don't end up in accountancy. But something I wish I probably did more, maybe at university, maybe in the first couple of years of even studying and being here, it's just getting a better idea of what everyone else does, and talking to as many people as possible and try and learning new things. I guess a small case study is from one of my very good friends, actually, who he took a year out after school, and he said, I'm not sure what I want to do right now. And I think a lot of us have the pressure of the job market, and we get pulled into London, and you get sucked into whatever job you can get. And although I didn't get pulled into a job like that as such, and I wanted to do it anyway, he took his time, he took his year out, he spoke to as many people as possible, and now he's in exactly the kind of job he wants to be in. And I think you can use that for the rest of your career, that, you know, you don't have to be comfortable in what you're in. You know, you can, if you talk to as many people as possible, then, you know, there might be something sort of better for you and suited to you, I guess.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's such important advice when you think about all the people that you've met through your university days. You know, perhaps your year level and years above and years below, and then coming into the working environment and just having those conversations. What do you do? How does that work?
Yeah.
And there again, yeah, okay, this is very kind of you speaking to one of your friends' dads, which is quite nice. But I'm always saying to Matt, well, you know, surely some of your friends' dads and mums, you know, they've all got, you know, amazing
Indeed.
jobs.
Yeah.
You know, and I know some of the parties you've been to and some of the people that you've, you know, studied with and what their parents do, all that free information, and then suddenly go, that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me until I was 29 to work out what I really wanted to do. And I really wish I could have fast tracked that. And I think if you can fast track that, and I think the best way is you know, talk to a lot of people about, just go and have conversations. What do you do? How do you do it? And then again, working with these different types of companies, obviously, please don't make any say any names, but there's some of those you walk out of and you think, oh, they're good. That's a brilliant organization. And others you walk out of and you think, God, how does that operate? I'd hate to work there. And it's constant free learning, which is great. So
Exactly.
your world at the moment, how do you see that as developing and changing over the next few years?
I guess in a huge way. With accountancy, sort of the industry as a whole, we're kind of built on certain laws and regulations that you have to abide by. So over time, over a short period of time, these aren't going to change that much, but over a long period of time, you know, with the automation and the technology advancements that are happening, with the creative ways that people are now accounting for things, and how businesses are changing just in general, you know, these companies need to change how they sort of utilize their balance sheets and their P&Ls, and how that changes. I guess from an auditor's point of view, we see clients now, you know, the automation and technology advancements, it's taking over people's jobs in a way that, you know, this advancement can start doing all the accountancy jobs that people are doing. And it's just really interesting to hear from clients about, you know, whether they're taking on more people, how they're adjusting their accountancy teams. But yeah, it's very insightful.
Yeah, and I dare say you meet some people who say that as a, you know, that's a bad thing, you know, because I'm happy, perhaps my job is totally changing. I always, you know, I believe that some of the jobs that we're going to be doing in 2 years' time don't exist yet.
Yeah.
And some of the jobs that we're currently doing won't exist. And some people see that as a great fear factor, and others see it as an opportunity, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. And we see it within our business that we're going into these big companies, and the technology that we're using, it just gets better and better and better. And it just means that we can do our job better.
Yeah.
And we're actually seeing us take on more employees to run these technologies. So as you say, it's not a case of taking away jobs. Sometimes it is adding jobs in for these new technologies.
Yeah. Yeah, and also sort of linking into that I think, you know, when we talk about age diversity in the working environment, has never been as huge as it is now. Do you notice the difference in sort of generation and generational thinking within your environment?
Yeah, I think I do, definitely. We're lucky to be in teams where we'll have a partner or a director who's, you know, maybe within their 40s or 50s. Then you'll have a director, maybe your 30s, then into your senior management, 20s, 30s, and into your lowest grade, which could be an associate at maybe 18 years old. So you're getting people of every different generation coming through. And it is being shown massively, sort of age diversity in the professional services firms, because they're trying to promote age diversity, and that they're pushing these associates through, the really talented and special ones, to try and get to these management positions, to challenge those managers to think of sort of different routes and different variables that we can use. So we are seeing sort of a lot more youngsters get into positions where, you know, historically these might be done by older generations.
Yeah, yeah. And to sort of to finish off with, you've given us a great overview of what you've done and how you've developed and how you've grown, which is a lovely story, and also that studying, which is immense. So, you looking at the future for yourself as Robbie, what do you feel that you need to do to self-manage, self-develop, and future-proof yourself?
Yeah, I actually hadn't thought of it too much in the last couple of years. Just as you say with the studying, you don't. It's not a good time to really think about it too much. My priority was finishing my exams,
Yeah,
but certainly within the last 2 or 3 months, and actually, David, within reading your book, it's actually pushed me on in the last week. Um, I have to think about the next steps. Whether that's staying in my company or moving company, and if I stay, how it affects my appraisals, how it affects my communication and relationships with certain individuals. Um, and it's the thing that I think I only really considered would affect me self-development when I'm looking for a new job or a new role. But actually, it's something you need to really think about over
all
time.
the time, all the
And
time.
and by integrating that into your mind, just when you're sitting in front of the TV or on a train, if you can think of yourself for that little bit of time, then it'll stand you in much better stead.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, one of the key aspects to it that we've already briefly mentioned is that creating that thinking, reflecting time, because we're running and going faster and faster than ever before.
Yeah,
Our work environments are so task orientated that, do we actually get that chance to sort of sit and think about, where we're
yeah,
going with this and how we're going to contribute? Naturally, we should be, but because we're on, you finish, one piece of work and the next, it's already, the next bit's already started.
yeah,
And perhaps, as we said earlier, you don't have that chance to sit down and think about necessarily what's gone well and how we're doing, because
exactly
we're
that.
on to the next bit. So that's been wonderful, great incitement. And I like particularly what you said about the key of listening. I think in this world at the moment, certainly with social media, everyone wants to blah, 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 there's lots of
Absolutely, yeah.
noise going out there, isn't there?
Mm,
And it's, well, actually, what can I learn from them? And I think that's great. The notebook, yeah, I think that's just,
yeah,
as I said,
indeed.
I'm always on my notebooks, and I love the concept to challenge and be challenged. And it doesn't
Mm.
matter what you end up doing in your career, always follow that philosophy.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant motto. Actually, the company have done very well in putting it, because if it gets me thinking about it on a daily basis, then that's what the motto's for, and it's certainly something I'll take forward, I think.
Yeah, and also sometimes if you have a bit of a lull, you may sort of sometimes get into a comfort zone. And that's the time, especially in your environment, you've got to think, actually, I can feel myself getting sucked into a comfort zone. I need to get out there and
Yeah,
make other things happen, because otherwise you get left behind too quickly.
absolutely.
And I dare say people in their 30s and 40s are thinking about that towards your generation. And I dare say in a few years, you'll be thinking about that through people coming up
Absolutely.
in,
Yeah,
in, into the organization as well.
yeah.
So I think that's really good. And I like your idea of something you wish you'd have done a little bit more, is find out a little bit more what everyone does. And
Yeah,
I dare say you're a bit like me, sort of in my sort of 20s. It's, with your mates, it's all bravado, few drinks, and I do this and I do that, and sort of
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
banter and everything. But if you can sit down and go, so what is it you do? How
yeah,
do you do that? And
yeah.
be inquisitive about each other. There's so much free learning you can do.
Mm,
And I try and do this with a lot of my friends, but also, hence why I'm doing these podcasts and
yeah,
videos, is that helps me to learn. And I do talks in colleges and schools and some universities. And that, I don't get paid for that. That's just me learning.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's been
Just
wonderful.
just on that note, then, David, in terms of the work that you've done, all these people that you've worked for and sort of worked with, um, is there any advice that you've heard from their angle, that you would maybe impart on people of our age, just for our future careers? What's the sort of the main thing that these successful people of sort of 40 or 50 year old nowadays, would give down to us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it always depends on your definition of success. My definition of success is just to enjoy myself.
Mm.
Um, but obviously, in terms of running businesses, it does involve a hell of a lot of hard work.
Yeah,
And you know, you see all these sponsored adverts on social media. Follow these 6 steps to, you know, earning £1 million within 6 months. Yeah, do me a favour.
yeah, of course.
Um, you know, it does involve a lot of hard work. I think your network is so vitally important, and accept, you know, perhaps for some people at the moment that you're vulnerable and that you need help.
Yeah,
And sometimes the male ego isn't particularly good at that, in sort of asking for help. And also, yeah, just sharing. And I think that's good. But I think also what you said about finding out what it is you want to do,
mm.
you know, what your passion is. And doesn't matter what your passion is, as long as, you know, you're good at it, you've got a
Yeah,
passion for it. But also you've got to be realistic. Can it make money?
absolutely. Yeah, very true.
um, and if it can make money, hey, crack on.
Yeah,
You know, I talk about my football program collection that everyone just laughs at me. I just adore my old. I've got thousands of them.
yeah,
But I came to the realization a couple of years ago, David, it's not going to turn into a business. It'll only ever be a hobby. Just
indeed.
enjoy it.
Yeah,
And I think also, yeah, in enjoyment is very important. But I think what I'm learning and continuing to learn is that concept of stopping, reflecting, discussing, and just making sure you're you. Don't
yeah,
try and be anybody else.
very good.
I think that's where I've fallen down, and a lot of my friends have fallen down. We're too worried about competing with each other.
Yeah,
Where's the competition? Yeah, you can drive each other on, but that's why I love your challenging bit. It's such an
yeah,
important word, challenging.
yeah.
So there's sort of the few things that I would go for. So
Wonderful. Thank you.
just to wrap this up, so you know, for everyone that's watched these videos and listened to the podcast, we've heard from Rowan, we've heard from Matt and Johnny and Lauren, and then obviously we've saved the best till last.
Very kind.
I
Very
wrote that
kind.
down before we
Yeah,
started.
and
Obviously,
I've saved the best till last question for you, David. From your book, you've mentioned that. Well, I'd like to ask you a question. What
oh
would
dear.
you buy? What would you buy if your sister phoned you up now and said she'd won £6.8 million?
It's a football program,
Football program. Nice.
and there's 2 football programs I'd like. I'd like the 1923 FA Cup semi-final and the 1940 FA Cup semi-final. I've got the finals, but I
Yeah.
haven't got the semi-finals. They're very difficult,
Really.
mainly because that would give such great sentimental value.
Yeah.
Because I like things. The way I look at things at the moment, I only ever buy now something if I really need it.
Mm.
So, what do I need? I'm quite happy with more or less everything I've got.
Yeah. Very good way of looking at it.
So also, if she did do that, I'd say she could buy me dinner, because when I
Ah,
see her, I always buy her dinner.
nice.
And
Nice.
that
Very
would be
good.
lovely, because that would mean that I'd be spending time with her, and I do need to spend better time with my
Nice.
sisters.
And my final question is: has Kylie Minogue asked you out on a date yet?
Well, we've got very close.
Have you?
So I sort of half met her last year, and I think she looked at me as if I was some sort of weirdo, because for some strange reason, all the bouncers just looked at me, and because I was
Yeah.
smartly dressed, I got really close to her. And
Oh,
she
you can class that as a date then.
So yeah, I think I can say that I've had a date with Kylie Minogue, and
Very good.
I'm just quite happy with that. It just made me happy. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, and thanks for sending me some questions. Well, you could have told me what you're going to
Not,
ask me.
not
Yeah.
at all. Well, I'm putting you on the spot, David. I'm taking you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
Something
well,
you
this is
preach.
it. This is it, and I think that's always important, that we can talk very quickly off the top of our heads as well,
Yeah,
with good
absolutely.
answers. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you soon. That
Yeah,
you and Matt can cook us dinner one Sunday afternoon.
indeed. Yeah, we'll have you round once all this is over.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, thanks very much.
See you, David.
All right, cheers then. Bye bye.